The Rio Arriba County deputy who used a taser on a 15-year-old high school special needs student has been criminally charged in that May incident. Jeremy Barnes has also been fired. The Rio Grande Sun broke the news of the incident and the discipline, and the KOAT News reports Barnes has been fired from 2 other jobs and left another 2 while he was under investigation, according to an attorney who filed a lawsuit on behalf of that student. Now, there's a lot to dig into here, Mary, but we wanted to start with the Jeremy Barnes history. A lot of discipline for a guy to still get a gun and a badge. It's interesting to me how the bit where he didn't even fill in where he had been in the Grants Police Department force on his application, and it just, well, nobody knew. No one knew this man had even been, or if they knew in Espanola, they didn't care about it. So what's your sense of how that goes from one place to another, how we follow officers, and how we can find out what these guys are all about, frankly, their backgrounds? Something got missed here, desperately.
I mean, yeah. So I guess, first of all, ideally there would be some sort of fantastic system for tracking officers.
Right.
At the same time, I mean, I think, you know, I'm a journalist. I can do some pretty quick background checks on people pretty quickly.
Yep.
So there's that as well. This story is interesting for the viewers who have not been watching it. The Rio Grande Sun has stayed on top of it.
Yep.
They're doing a great job. And then there's a lot of layers too. So of course, like you mentioned, this idea of a police department, a law enforcement agency hiring someone with a history. It happens. It has happened in Albuquerque.
Right.
I just reported a case last year. And then there's the fact that this is the tasing itself is such a high-profile issue for a pretty small town law enforcement agency as well. So I think they find themselves kind of in like the big leagues of media or journalism, so to speak, for this state. You know, and so it's interesting to watch that. And then of course it seems like there's some freedom of information or press issues too with just the interaction. It's just, it's fascinating to watch on Twitter and on the Rio Grande Sun's website of how this is kind of playing out. And based on what I'm reading, the sheriff's, the way he's trying to deal with it all. Yeah,
interesting. And when you think about this as well, Rachel, the idea that that video was so critical. It was so critical here. Lapel, you know what I mean? We've been having these arguments about these lapel cameras over and over and over. I can't help but think about that kid and her poor mom, his poor mom, if that lapel camera had not been part of the process. You know what I mean? And this is a resource officer. Cops in schools. What are we saying here about cops in schools as well, and how we kind of deal with that situation?
Absolutely. Without public documentation, without public information, this would be a very different story. It probably would not even be out there. I think about the reporting that the Rio Grande Sun did, where one of the first reactions of the department apparently was to try to just transfer the deputy.
That's right. That's right.
That might have been what happened.
On his own request.
Yeah, and that might have been what happened if there had not been this record and this attention to this.
Good point right there, exactly right. Pick up on that if you would, the idea of resource officers, lapel cameras, all that stuff.
Well, there's multiple layers.
Yes.
So first of all, like, does it really make sense to have people who have, you know, you can call this lethal force, but you know, tasers can really do some harm on a campus? So there's a whole conversation about we need more law enforcement, more folks on campus. So that brings that into question. This whole fight we've been having here in Bernalillo County about lapel cams, really protecting officers who are doing the right thing from sort of being wrongly accused of things, but also protecting the public. Like, I watched the video and it was disturbing. We were talking about it before we went on the air. I mean, I think it's really disturbing how quickly it was used, how sort of cavalierly they were used, and then we have to also put it in some context. You know, Rio Arriba, sadly, you know, former sheriff, has a very storied history. Formerly married to a powerful state legislator. Rodela, who you know, the former sheriff is in jail now for some pretty egregious crimes and abuse of power. So there is a culture in that particular department. I don't think it's unique to Rio Arriba County, but I think it's certainly calls for a lot more public oversight and I'm glad the Attorney General is getting involved in this, because I think that local law enforcement, there's some great departments. I'm a firm believer that most law enforcement folks are good folks, But there's people like this guy who, if we're not watching, if we don't have lapel cameras, if we don't have a way to sort of hold them accountable,
right.
if there isn't a system in place, they can say, like, how often has this person sort of been outside the law?
Right.
Then we have a real problem with the credibility of law enforcement at a time when we really are at a kind of a crisis point between sort of crime and how much confidence we have in law enforcement. Right?
Good points there. Serge, another layer here that was interesting to me is the idea of the training this man received to be in this situation, which consisted of 2 weeks from one person. And I know some folks, probably you guys do too, who work with special needs kids, highly insulted that you can verbally teach someone in 2 weeks how to deal with high stress situations with special needs kids. There's no way.
No.
There's absolutely no way that's going to work out. So the school system has another thing they need to deal with, how they train these folks to deal with these kids as well.
Right. I mean, so, you know, the school resource officers, it's a national phenomenon, this idea that it makes schools safer. It's pretty well documented that it actually makes them less safe, and that it's introducing more students into the criminal justice system at a younger age. But when you talk about a disabled student or a student with special needs, they not only need special training, these students often have their own plans, right? A behavioral intervention plan that is in agreement with the school on how that's going to be handled. And the SRO may not have any idea, may not have special training, maybe say, this is a situation I learned in a context of an adult out in the, you know, in the regular world rather than here in the school. And it's a disservice to everybody that leads to incidents like this that are traumatizing to the individuals involved, that are dreadful for everybody. But it's a real indictment of the lack of training, the lack of understanding that this is a special situation, and the idea that, oh, let's just put someone with a taser in there and that'll be fine.
Interesting. Mayor, I want to pick up something Rachel mentioned a second ago, and this idea that, you know, you could go in there, and tone is important. That's why that video was so critical. Tone is very important in these things. You can read something about what somebody said, but it's a whole other deal when you've got guys swearing at students, you know, threatening students in this horrible tone of voice. I got to think that the city fathers and moms of Española got to pull back here and say, what are we doing here with this SRO, this resource officer business? Is there a conversation to be had here? Is this enough of an incident to really have a stronger look at this idea up there?
Well, I mean, SROs have been, gosh, I think it's a solid 60 years or so that it really kind of burst onto like news and the work that journalists do to understand it better. You're always, as far as kind of the public opinion question, you're always going to have people on both sides. And I would assume is the case in Española. So there will be parents who truly question you know, as Hector Balderas said in his statement, like, is the safety of schools and, like, you know, these should be places. Well, no one would argue that these should be places where children feel safe, but just like whether SROs are good for that or not. And then there are very pro law enforcement, you know, people, and we see this all the time. So with every use of force issue, there will always be people who question the use of force, and then there will always be those who wonder, who believe that the law enforcement would be in the right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it, and that's that. Exactly right. You know, Eric, let me bring up something you mentioned about the culture of the situation there. Well, Sheriff Lujan is in the news very recently for pulling over somebody with a Mexican flag flying and an American flag, felt they were on the wrong side, decided he could do some curbside justice and straighten these people out. Now they got another legal problem over this. Is this making your point about how something's got to break up?
Yeah,
here?
you know, I think part of the challenge, and I'm glad that the AG is involved, part of the problem is local governments, right? And we have the problem here, the biggest county in the state, you know, the county commission in Albuquerque, in Bernalillo County, is having a terrible time trying to raid. I was at a couple of those hearings, those commission meetings, where the family of victims of the most recent, you know, sheriff-involved shooting were saying, like, we have to do something around lapel cam because the story is not really what happened. And even the biggest, arguably the most resourced, the most sophisticated, the most urban, the most experienced, you would say, biggest staff, they can't seem to force their sheriff because he's an independent elected official.
That's right.
So if you take a smaller county like Rio Arriba, where being the sheriff is kind of a powerful If you don't have a good moral compass, if you see that as many sheriffs, sadly, in smaller counties have seen themselves as like, you know, there's a new sheriff in town, I set the rules, and by the way, you, the county commission, very little oversight because I'm independently elected.
Right.
It's great for maybe democracy to have as many folks elected and accountable to the public as possible, but this is a great example of maybe you need another level of oversight from another body that's the governing body of the county, that they should be able to say, like, this is unacceptable behavior. You can zero out their budget. You can put all sorts of conditions. Right. We haven't been able to do that here. You know, there have been efforts to try to get Sheriff Gonzalez to using the budget to do the right thing on the cameras, and he's just like, look, you didn't elect me. The people elect me. They knew I didn't support cameras. They elected me anyway. I'm going to do what I want to do. And that creates a real challenge for us because you sort of have these rogue law enforcement officials saying, like, I'm not accountable. Who am I accountable to? I'm not accountable to anybody.
Only in 4 years or 8 years. Exactly right. Good last point there. That's it for this week. Thanks again to our panelists for digging in on this week's news and offering their opinions.